Hello, my name is Tony. You know how some films can haunt you? Maybe a single scene, a brief snatch of music, a fleeting visual image, a momentary instant, seconds, minutes, or even hours of screen time. Some aspect of something you've seen or heard lodges in the brain and stays with you, usually subconsciously, waiting for just the right moment, the right trigger to bring it to the surface. So there were two things. Some time ago, Sunday morning, early, overcast weather, naturally, I'm driving through the South Wales countryside heading towards Brecon, the mountainous beacons in the distance. Road is empty and is quiet. There's a man up ahead walking in the same direction as me on a road flanked by trees. I'll pass him in a few moments. He looks like a travelling man to me, gentleman of the road, a wanderer. Long, well-worn coat, ragged trousers, wide-brimmed hat on his head set at a crooked angle. I drive past, see him in the rear view. His face is a grey blur, I don't see it clearly. As he recedes, an image from the Asphyx, the one of Robert Stevens at the end, trapped in immortal decay, pops into my head. Something about the overall look of the man, nothing specific, but something brought this to mind. Second thing, more recently, channel subscriber and commenter, the filmmaker Shani Grewal, mentioned the Asphyx in an anecdotal comment, giving rise to the same image and sparking recall of the travelling man. Links made, and here we are. Kino Lorber's 2023 Blu-ray version is an extended cut that adds to the high-definition remaster standard definition footage taken from the original US release print. 13 minutes of it. The variations in picture and audio quality are instantly discernible and don't add much overall, apart from slowing things down a bit, but it's a more complete experience, I suppose, and it's what I got hold of to refresh my memory for the benefit of this review, which I needed, as the last time I saw it was on TV in the early 80s, and before that on the big screen at the Market Hall Cinema in the early 70s. Without the magnificent Kino Lorber, who are a sodding godsend and no mistake, reference detail would have been a problem. The Asphyx, no anal repair mechanism as the title might suggest to some, but instead refers to a sort of personal grim reaper that visits those about to die, presumably to take their souls to wherever souls go. The film itself is a theatrically staged Victorian parlour piece that jettisons lurid shock, sex and gore in favour of what it considers your thinking man's thriller. Something a bit more intellectually appointed than the standard issue fangs, butchery, tits, ass and blood.
What do we have for entertainment?
It's Victorian England, 1875. Well-to-do scientist, philanthropist and widower Sir Hugo Cunningham Robert Stevens arrives back at his country estate with his new fiancée, Anna Fiona Walker, in tow. The family dynamics are thus: Cunningham has a son, Clive Ralph Arliss, who is engaged to some bird in Switzerland who we don't get to see. He has a daughter, Christina Jane Lapate, and an adopted son, Giles Robert Powell. Giles and Christina are romantically involved and set to get engaged. So far, so good. All happy families, jolly good show, all is well. As you may or may not know, Victorians had a morbid fascination with death and the supernatural. Clairvoyants did a cracking trade during the old Queen's reign, Victoria, not Elton, and seances were very popular, as was photographing the dead and the dying. Family albums were chock full of dead people. Cunningham belongs to a highbrow parapsychological society and has a keen interest in photography. He's taken several snaps of those close to death, using different equipment and techniques. On each one, a dark smudge is clear on the prints, hovering near the subject. The society concludes this is evidence of the human soul leaving those soon-to-be worm fodder. Cunningham isn't so sure. Cunningham has invented a camera that can record moving pictures, 15 years ahead of Dixon's kinetograph. Historically incongruous, but hey, he decides to try it out by filming Giles and Christina, Clive and Anna boating on the river that runs through his estate. Tragedy strikes when Clive's pole gets stuck in the mud. Well, we all know what that's like, and he smacks his head into a low-lying tree branch, capsizing their boat. Although the Victorians invented the seaside resort and championed bathing in the ocean as a recreational pastime, these two clowns can't swim, so Anna and Clive drown. Cunningham has recorded the incident in what was the first ever home movie. When he and Giles play it back, a dark smudge is noted beside Clive as he headbutts nature and loses. Cunningham theorizes that old Smudger represents the Asphyx of Greek mythology, a protoplasmic psychopomp that whisks away the souls of the dying so that they, well, die. When he pops off to record a public hanging, he takes with him another invention, the spotlight. That was Louis Hartmann, 1879, 4 years later. Yep, an early super trooper. Once fired up, it captures the Asphyx in its beam, trapping and immobilizing it, which is bad news for the hanged man, or more bad news, because, like, getting hanged isn't quite bad enough, as he doesn't die, just jerks about at the end of the rope. When the spotlight shuts down, the Asphyx does its stuff and old necktie boy expires. This has validated Cunningham's theory. Back at the lab, he and Giles murder a guinea pig with a poison carrot. They trap its Asphyx with the spotlight and maneuver it into a casket, which they then seal. The guinea pig doesn't die. To prove a point, Cunningham gives the hapless rodent a slug of sulfuric acid. Nope, it still lives. He has discovered the secret of immortality and the unfettered joy of torturing small furry animals. Things get out of hand. The ever-inventive Cunningham invents an electric chair, 6 years ahead of Southwick's conception of the device. Incidentally, he was an American dentist. Presumably, if you didn't pay your bill, he'd fry your ass where you sat. Hell of an incentive to stump up the cash, I would have thought. Cunningham will crank up the voltage so that he is on the point of death, and Giles will trap and imprison his Asphyx. Christina blunders in during this procedure and is coerced into helping. With Cunningham's Asphyx contained and locked in the family crypt, he recovers from his near electrocution and is now immortal. But hey, what's eternity without company? Cunningham gets hold of a guillotine. He didn't invent that, down to Joseph Ignace Guillotine in 1789, and proposes they rig it with a failsafe, put Christina in it, contain her Asphyx and make her immortal. Ah, but the irony. Earlier, Christina unwittingly freed the immortal guinea pig and made it her pet. N.A.R, the guinea pig, probably not his name, but it will do, chews through a hose, pumping water onto the phosphorus stones, integral to the Super Trooper to power the spotlight and capture the Asphyx. The equipment malfunctions and Christina is decapitated. Oops. Distraught with grief, Cunningham demands Giles free his Asphyx from the family vault, so that he might die. The vault is only accessible via an impregnable door which is secured with a combination lock, and only Giles knows the code. Giles agrees on the proviso. Cunningham makes him immortal. To this end, Cunningham invents the gas chamber. Is there anything this guy didn't fucking invent? Putting Giles in it, he completely underestimates the depths of his adopted son's grief over the loss of his fiancée. As the gas pumps in, Giles strikes a match, blowing up himself, Cunningham, the lab, and all the equipment. Not being completely inhumane, Giles has left behind the combination to the crypt in a sealed envelope. Cunningham, reasoning that immortality is God's punishment for his misdeeds, burns it, and he and N.A.R will now spend eternity together. The Asphyx is one of the stagiest films I've ever seen. It's very much how you imagine watching a genuine late Victorian drama in a theatre might be. The sets, the composition, theatrical blocking, stiff and stilted performances, over-exaggerated emoting and projecting, all present and correct. Apart from the framing device, more of that later, and a few external location scenes, it's mostly studio-bound. Brian Comport's heavy-handed script is weighted down with a melodramatic combo of sermonizing, wonky pseudo-scientific exposition and histrionic musings on the nature of life and death. There are competent actors fronting it, but their shared agenda seems to be a focus on strained emotional angst and over-earnest bombast. Robert Stevens holds the dubious position of my number 2 favourite portrayer of the famous Baker Street detective, after Peter Cushing and in front of Jeremy Brett, in Billy Wilder's The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes. Love that film, and his performance in it. Here he cranks up the ham a good few notches, where restraint and reflective pathos would have served him better. Robert Powell was still in the early stages of his career, so he's full of youthful bravado, if lacking in screen technique. As for the two ladies, in keeping with the female milieu of the Victorian age, they're not exactly lookers in the conventional sense. Jane Lapotaire is elfin, angular and whimsically dopey, whilst Fiona Walker is cut from slightly more matronly crinoline. That said, sex and glamour is hardly a priority in depicting a period which was more about chaste reserve and repression, unless you were a streetwalker or music hall actress, shall we say. It is quite wonderfully photographed by the superlative Freddie Young, a 3-times Oscar winner for Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago and Ryan's Daughter, back in the days when an Oscar was awarded for creative fire and skill, rather than an attachment to the on-trend ideology of the moment. I'm just waiting for the day when that big Hollywood tear-jerking biopic about a quadriplegic Hamas terrorist, rapist, homophobe sweeps the board in all categories. Bound to happen sooner or later. They could call it Sweet Home Alabama. I think the score by Bill McGuffey, who did the music for Daleks Invasion Earth 2150 AD, is horribly twee and mundane to my ears, but I've been reliably informed that I'm wrong and it's damn good and super tasteful. Well, pardon me all over the place for wanting something a bit more eerie and impactful. What do I like about it? The historical incongruities that give it an early steampunk flavour. Cunningham's inventions are things before their time and look very realistic, like they might actually work, along with the use of contraptions used most traditionally in executions. The electric chair, the guillotine and the gas chamber. And there are some nice nods to H.G. Wells and Jules Verne. One of the themes developed, or partially developed, to an extent is the notion of the sanctity of life, and a commentary on the death penalty, with a public hanging and the protest against it going on at the gallows, complete with angry mob and homemade placards. Looks familiar. The Asphyx, when it shows up in the spotlight beam, is a decently executed bit of SFX in the technical context of the time. It's shown as a writhing, skeletal phantasm emitting a shrill, high-pitched shrieking. Crap by today's standards, but not without some effective retro-mythic visual appeal. It's like it mirrors the pain and anguish of the individual in the throes of death, almost empathic. What I like most, though, is the wraparound device which bookends the beginning and end of the film. It opens in 1970s London at the scene of a head-on car crash. Two cars have collided with each other, drivers thrown through the windshields. A cop pulls a body out from under one of the cars by its legs. There is a groan. The cop is shocked and surprised that the guy is still alive. Then we cut to Victorian times for the rest of the film. The ending shifts forward to London in the 70s and a shambling, ancient-looking man with a grey mask-like face. He's cradling a white guinea pig as he stands on the pavement. He shuffles into the road and two cars speed towards him, one from either side. The film freezes before they hit him and each other. It's these final scenes that I find haunting, and they are what stayed with me from my very first viewing. I won't claim the Asphyx is a classic genre piece, it falls far short of that. But I imagine the steampunk movement, a social scene which has its own events, gatherings and fashions, would cite it as influential, and maybe even hold it in some esteem. Modern audiences are likely to find it slow, mediocre, artificial and unexciting, and I'm not going to disagree, although it still manages to hold my attention, and I love the paraphernalia on show and those framing scenes. Perhaps the best adjective to describe it is unusual. It's an unusual amalgam of science fiction, horror, Victorian ghost story with a nice line in steampunk revisionism simmering away in the mix. It's not the thinking man's thriller it aspires to being because the science is too convoluted, dumb and unfeasible, but that doesn't mean it lacks the capacity to be thought-provoking on a very casual level and pose some intriguing minor questions about existential morality, something along the same lines as Frankenstein. Maybe it would have worked better in streamlined form as an episode of an Amicus anthology flick. Just a thought. Mucho gracias for your time and attention. Feel free to do whatever you choose to do next. Hit like, don't like, comment, subscribe, check out my early access Patreon thing, or even make a welcome financial contribution via the thanks button. At a time and place, somewhere down the line, I will be back with another episode. Whether the show must go on is debatable. However, it seems very likely that it will. Farewell for now, pilgrims.